Good morning, evening, or night. Wherever you are, welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Saturday, 9th August 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. India is navigating a period of market volatility, exacerbated by escalating trade tensions with the United States. Trump's tariffs on Indian imports, now at 50%, risk widening the $6.30 trillion stock gap between India and China. A White House trade advisor has referred to India as the Maharaja of tariffs and mentioned an additional 25% duty, citing national security. This could lead to a 10% decline in the Nifty 50, impacting India's GDP and corporate earnings. Domestic inflation data for July will also influence the market. HSE Securities Pankaj Pandey projects the Nifty may reach 27,000 by year-end and recommends stocks like L&T, Lemon Tree Hotels, and Dalmia Bharat. Damesh Shah of ICICI Securities suggests buying PFC shares as the Indian stock market approaches a significant support zone. Ashish Kumar Chauhan of NSA has outlined a path for India to reach a $30 trillion economy by 2047. He asserts that India can handle the tariff crisis, describing the U.S. government as whimsical. Stock benchmarks slightly decreased at the open, with it and pharmaceutical sectors dragging the market down. There is speculation about a potential collaboration between Zerodha and Perplexity to provide Indian stock market data on Perplexity Common. India and Oman are expected to announce a free trade agreement soon. Despite Trump's tariff threats, India intends to maintain its relationship with Russia, evidenced by NSA Ajit Doval's visit to Moscow, to strengthen defense and energy ties. Jaishankar may also visit Moscow. Indian refiners can manage without Russian oil, albeit with certain trade-offs. The Economic Times suggests that Trump's tech shift could enable India to develop a UPI-like system for AI. Turning to the United States, Trump's imposition of tariffs on Indian imports, now at 50%, is a major source of trade friction. A White House trade advisor has referred to India as the Maharaja of tariffs and mentioned an additional 25% duty, citing national security. Hindustan Times reports that a report indicates Trump used tariffs to benefit corporate allies. A top Trump aide accuses India of financing Russia's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin criticizes Trump's tariff pressure on India over Russian oil, deeming it illegal. The Economic Times suggests that Trump's tech shift could enable India to develop a UPI system for AI. Meanwhile, in Russia, despite Trump's threat of additional tariffs on India, NSA Ajit Doval is in Moscow to strengthen India's defense and energy ties, and Jaishankar may follow. The Kremlin criticizes Trump's tariff pressure on India over Russian oil, deeming it illegal, underscoring Russia's stance on maintaining trade relationships. South Korea is currently seeing a surge in cryptocurrency trading, highlighted by up its record $1.09 billion in XRP trades, which is fueling an XRP boom. However, Bitcoin prices in South Korea are lagging global markets, showing a 1.23% kimchi premium. South Korea hopes to revitalize its crypto market. Tax reforms in South Korea are causing concerns among investors. The country anticipates a rate cut in August, influenced by worsening U.S. employment data. Fiscal coordination is increasing between South Korea and global credit agencies, impacting Asian emerging markets. South Korea has launched the Maska Fund to support its shipbuilding sector and boost ETF revenues. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries is reinstating seaweed stockpiling to stabilize prices. Anduril is partnering with Korean Air on US and expanding its presence by opening an office in Seoul. Investment by South Korean investors in U.S. government bonds is increasing due to positive expectations for the U.S. Meanwhile, North Korea is dismantling loudspeakers along its border, with South Korea suggesting a possible reduction in tension. Shifting focus to relations between the United States and South Korea, the two countries are planning a summit with defense as a key topic, which may reshape their alliance. The specifics of a trade agreement remain unresolved, and the timing of a U.S. tariff cut on automobiles is still under discussion, according to South Korea. In other developments, South Korea has postponed its decision on Google's request to export map data. Finally, Chinese companies are increasingly entering South Korea's pet market, leading to heightened competition and potential risks. Russia is at the center of diplomatic activity, as President Vladimir Putin has agreed to meet with Donald Trump in Alaska to discuss a potential ceasefire in Ukraine, followed by a second meeting in Moscow. This comes as Russia faces a looming fiscal crunch impacting its war efforts. Russia has weighed in on the U.S.-India tariff dispute, asserting New Delhi's right to choose trade partners. Simultaneously, Russia continues military actions in Ukraine, employing distant strikes and new tactics, including drone attacks that resulted in the deaths of at least 8 civilians overnight, one of which was a devastating bus attack. Iskander missiles launched from occupied Zaporizhia Oblast struck Dnipro, hospitalizing 3 civilians. India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval, met with Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister in Moscow to discuss bilateral ties and joint projects. Official Moscow has stated that Russia's guarding of the Armenia-Iran border is a situation that cannot be ignored. In other news, the return of Russia's dead hand system is an indicator of rising global instability. The United Arab Emirates and Russia have signed a trade in services and investment agreement during a ceremony in Moscow, strengthening economic ties. Russia responded to Trump's nuclear submarine announcement. Ukraine remains embattled in a conflict with Russia, enduring ongoing Russian military actions, including drone and missile strikes. President Zelensky may be invited to Alaska by Donald Trump to discuss the conflict during a potential meeting with Vladimir Putin. Despite the ongoing conflict, Ukraine is holding fast to its demands ahead of the planned Putin-Trump summit. The United States finds itself deeply involved in international diplomacy, as Donald Trump considers inviting Ukrainian President Zelensky to Alaska and is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, there to discuss a potential ceasefire in Ukraine. This meeting is planned amid escalating tensions and continued military actions by Russia in Ukraine. Trump's potential tariffs on Russia's oil buyers present significant economic and political risks. The U.S. is also engaged in a tariff dispute with India while closely monitoring Russia's activities, including its military strategies in Ukraine and its stance on international trade matters. Treasury yields rose from a 3-month low before a key inflation report that could impact the Federal Reserve's interest rate decisions. India is currently entangled in a tariff dispute with the United States, a situation on which Russia has commented, affirming India's right to choose its trade partners. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval recently met with Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister in Moscow to discuss bilateral ties and joint projects, signaling continued cooperation between the two nations. The situation along the Armenia-Iran border is drawing attention, as Russia's guarding of this border is a situation that, according to official Moscow, cannot be ignored. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, and Russia have solidified their economic partnership, signing a trade in services and investment agreement during a ceremony in Moscow, enhancing cooperation between the two countries. Saudi Arabia is making major economic moves, including a planned $600 billion investment in the U.S. under a significant defense agreement. The kingdom's transportation sector is booming, drawing in private investment opportunities. Camco Invest Saudi has relocated to the King Abdullah Financial District, while Saudi Awal Bank maintains stability and rewards shareholders through its 2024 dividend strategy. RIG Partners is supporting a UK logistics fund, even as Saudi Arabia leads as the largest borrower in the GCC for the first half of 2025, despite debt issuance dropping 20% year-over-year. Asian buyers can expect a second consecutive crude price increase. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has extended an invitation to the Prime Minister of Pakistan for the Davos in the Desert Investment Forum. JD.com is expanding its operations into Saudi Arabia with Joy Express. The kingdom is prioritizing the development of a robust local defense sector. The country's influence in sports expands, with Liverpool's Darwin Núñez potentially joining Al Hilal. Although Stuttgart's Enzo Millet has moved to Saudi Arabia, Son Heung-min chose MLS over a Saudi offer, citing Messi's impact. China's state media has voiced apprehensions regarding the safety of Nvidia's H20 chips for use within the country, citing technological and environmental consideration. Simultaneously, China is lobbying the U.S. to ease export controls on AI chips, particularly targeting high-bandwidth memory, HBM chips vital for AI applications, as part of a possible trade deal. In the robotics sector, Unity Robotics founder Wang Xingxing anticipates a breakthrough similar to the ChatGPT moment within 2 years, potentially allowing robots to operate in complex environments. Several Chinese aerospace firms are planning IPO to secure funding, backed by Beijing's policy promoting innovation. Yuanhua Tech, a Shenzhen-based surgical robot startup, intends to build an assembly plant in Hong Kong and launch an IPO to expand its orthopedic robot systems internationally. Eve Energy, China's fifth-largest EV battery manufacturer, is also planning a Hong Kong IPO. The unveiling of OpenAI's GPT-5 has elicited varied reactions in China, with some criticism directed at the perceived lack of substantial progress despite performance enhancement. Japan's stock market is booming, with the Japan index reaching unprecedented highs due to robust corporate earnings. The Topix index mirrored this success, hitting a record high as anxieties about us. Tariffs lessened and domestic firms projected optimism. Despite this economic upswing, a prominent member of the ruling party advised caution regarding potential interest rate hikes by the Bank of Japan. On the trade front, Japan achieved a significant agreement with the United States, eliminating tariff stacking and lowering duties on automobiles. Japanese corporations are demonstrating increased interest in cryptocurrency, establishing crypto fortresses using Bitcoin. SPI has applied for an XRP Bitcoin ETF, coinciding with reports indicating an 80% adoption rate of Ripple technology among Japanese banks. A nail salon in Japan is also venturing into cryptocurrency mining, harnessing green energy for Bitcoin extraction. In other news, heavy rainfall in southern Japan led to widespread flooding and mudslides. Ukraine's President Zelensky has firmly stated that no Ukrainian territory will be conceded to Russia as part of any peace agreement. Simultaneously, Ukraine is grappling with a humanitarian crisis unfolding at the Georgian border, placing blame on Russia for instigating the situation. Turning to the United States and its international relations, Donald Trump is set to meet Vladimir Putin in Alaska next Friday. The agenda focuses on finding a resolution to the ongoing war in Ukraine. However, there are growing concerns regarding the potential inexperience of Trump's team, which could complicate navigating the intricacies of such a high-stakes meeting. Before this summit, Brazil's President Lula has also been in contact with Putin, discussing avenues for peace in Ukraine. Across Europe, markets showed strength, with traders keenly awaiting the Bank of England's next move on interest rate. However, European businesses are navigating a complex landscape, grappling with the impact of tariffs imposed by former U.S. President Trump, alongside the appreciating value of the euro. In other news, Tesla's European sales figures revealed a fifth straight month of decline, contributing to a dip in the company's stock price. Meanwhile, seeking a resolution to the conflict in Ukraine, European diplomats have shared peace proposals with the United States government. Turning to the United States, the government is now considering peace proposals for Ukraine received from European officials, signaling a potentially significant shift in diplomatic engagement. Meanwhile, former President Trump is reportedly planning talks with Russian President Putin, aiming to explore avenues for ending the ongoing war in Ukraine. The economic impact of Trump's previous tariff policies continues to be felt in Europe, adding to the financial pressures faced by companies already dealing with a strong euro. Australia's financial markets are keenly awaiting the Reserve Bank's decision on the cash rate. Meanwhile, shares in Australian fintech firm Iris have jumped following preliminary talks about a possible acquisition by private equity giants Blackstone and Thoma Bravo Honesty. This highlights the continued global interest in the Australian fintech sector. In other corporate news, Liontown Resources is anticipated to see a stock increase following an unexpected development with Camax. Airbus has cautioned that Australia could be facing a future fuel crisis if preventative measures are not taken. Several analysts have recommended 3 Australian stocks as promising options for long-term investment portfolios. Turning to broader geopolitical issues, Donald Trump's oil campaign has the potential to intensify pressure on Moscow to bring an end to the ongoing war. Taiwan is experiencing a surge in foreign investment, fueled by optimism surrounding artificial intelligence and growth prospects, with $25.70 billion flowing into Taiwanese and South Korean stock. The island nation is also pushing forward with its satellite program, though insurance costs are reportedly rising. In a separate development, Taiwan has accused a former Tokyo Electron employee of leaking TSMC's 2M technology. Benefiting from policy shifts, TSMC shares have risen following Taiwan's announcement that the company is exempt from tariffs imposed by former U.S. President Trump. Canada has aligned with the European Union and the United Kingdom by setting a price cap of $47.60 per barrel on Russian oil. This move contrasts with the United States and Japan, who have not yet joined this initiative. Meanwhile, Canada's market is showing signs of a slowdown. The Toronto Stock Exchange is down as investors evaluate the country's economic resilience. South Africa is witnessing a retail realignment as ShopRite pulls out of Ghana and Malawi, adding to its list of African market exits. Meanwhile, MTN, the South African telecom behemoth, is forecasting substantial gains from its ventures in Nigeria and Ghana. In Cape Town, the skyline is set to change with the planned construction of the city's second-highest skyscraper in the central business district. Asian stocks are gaining momentum, while the dollar weakens as markets speculate on possible Federal Reserve easing. Eurasia intends to broaden its Hong Kong connectivity and is mulling a stock market debut. Turning to Thailand, a landmine explosion near the Cambodian border injured 3 Thai soldiers during a patrol. 1 lost a foot. In Brazil, President Lula and Russian President Putin conversed via telephone about enhancing Brazil-Russia relations. Switzerland is grappling with complex tariff issues, creating an uncertain environment. Following a visit to Indonesia, Federal Agriculture Minister Julie Collins is advocating for the continuation of live cattle trade between Indonesia and Australia. The euro and dollar have both edged lower against the Egyptian pound as market participants exercise caution, while Genesis has expanded into the Egyptian market with a new showroom. Investors contemplating Kenya's treasury bonds are urged to conduct a thorough assessment of pertinent factors. In Israel, Netanyahu's proposed strategy for Gaza is encountering opposition from Arab countries and internal security concerns. Laboratory businesses in France are navigating difficulties amid the nation's efforts to curtail subsidies. A Pakistani national, identified as a member of an international terrorist organization, was arrested while employed in Seoul, South Korea. One broker projects that Vietnam's VN index will reach 1,800 points next year. Eternal shares decreased by 3% after Anfin Singapore executed a block deal, selling 2.3 million shares. Hong Kong's wealth management sector is experiencing a resurgence of affluent clients. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.